"Don't get on that plane." Those 5 words came from a 9-year-old boy standing at the edge of the tarmac in the rain, his chest heaving, his worn sneakers soaked through, one small fist raised holding a torn piece of paper like it was the most important thing in the world, because it was. James Holt had one hand on the boarding rail and one foot on the top step when he heard it. He turned slowly. Below him, 30 feet of wet concrete away, stood a child he had seen exactly twice before in his life. The son of one of his ground crew workers, a small, serious boy named Caleb, who his father always said noticed things other people walked past. Today, Caleb had noticed something that was going to kill James Holt before midnight. 2 ground crew workers moved to pull the boy back, and Caleb went under the first man's arm without slowing, changed direction around the second man before he could react, and crossed the remaining distance to the boarding steps in the time it took James to process what he was seeing. The paper in Caleb's hand was torn from a maintenance log, the kind of log that documents every inspection, every repair, every system check before a flight. The kind of log that is supposed to be completed and signed before any aircraft leaves the ground. This one had not been completed, and someone had tried to make sure it never would be. James came down 2 steps without deciding to. Something in the boy's eyes made his body move before his mind gave the instruction. Wide, serious, completely steady eyes that were not performing urgency. They were carrying it, the way a child carries something heavy when there is no one else to carry it. Caleb held the paper up. James took it. He read it once. Then he read it again. Then he looked up at the aircraft above him. The aircraft he had been about to board, the aircraft his company owned, the aircraft that had passed every visible check this morning, and something cold moved through his chest that had nothing to do with the rain. The hydraulic inspection record had been falsified. Every signature on the page was real, every date was accurate, but the inspector whose name appeared at the bottom had been on leave for 11 days and could not have performed a single check on anything. Someone had known that and signed his name anyway. James looked at Caleb. The boy was watching his face with the particular stillness of someone who has already processed the worst part and is now waiting for the person in front of them to catch up. Then James looked toward the terminal building behind him. 2nd floor window, a figure standing completely still, watching the tarmac below, not moving toward the door, not reaching for a phone, just watching. Victor had been standing at that window since before Caleb started running. He had known exactly what the boy was carrying. Victor did not come down. That was the first thing James understood, standing on the wet tarmac with a falsified maintenance log in his hand. A man with nothing to hide would have already been running through the terminal door. A man who was innocent would have been on the phone. Victor was doing neither. He was standing at the window watching James the way a person watches something they arranged and cannot look away from. James had known Victor for 19 years. He folded the paper once and put it in his jacket pocket. Then he looked at Caleb. The boy was 9 years old, still breathing hard from the run, rain running down his round, dark cheeks, his olive green jacket dark with water at the shoulders. He was not crying. He was not trembling. He was watching James with the calm of a child who has already done the hardest part and knows it. James asked him one question. "Where did you find this?" Caleb pointed toward the far end of the hangar, the drainage channel that ran along the eastern wall, the narrow strip of ground between the hangar door and the perimeter fence where no passenger ever walked, and most ground crew walked only when they had a reason to. His father had sent him to retrieve a dropped tool near that drain that morning. Caleb had found the tool. He had also found the page lying face down in the shallow water at the drain's edge, already beginning to soften at the corners. Someone had dropped it in a hurry, or they had left it there believing the drain would finish what they started. They had not counted on a 9-year-old boy who read maintenance symbols because his father taught him they were a language worth knowing. James walked to the terminal door without looking up at Victor's window again. He did not need to look. He already knew what he would see. He had seen Victor's face across a table for 19 years, board meetings, negotiations, crisis calls at 2 a.m, and he knew every version of that face. What he had just seen in the 2nd floor window was a version he had never seen before, fear wearing the mask of calm. Inside the terminal, James called his head of security from the stairwell. 2 sentences. Pull the full maintenance record for the aircraft on Bay 4, and find out where Marcus Webb has been for the last 11 days. Marcus Webb was the inspector whose name was on the falsified page, a 22-year employee, a man James had trusted without question for longer than Caleb had been alive. His phone showed 2 missed calls from Victor while he was on the tarmac. James did not call back. He walked to the second-floor corridor with steady steps and stopped outside the door at the end of the hall. Through the glass panel, he could see Victor still standing at the window, phone now in hand, his back to the door. Victor did not hear him come in. That was the second mistake. The first had been believing that no one would find the page in time. Victor turned when he heard the door. The phone was still in his hand. The window was still behind him. And the face James had known for 19 years was showing him something it had never shown before. Not guilt exactly. Something older and colder than guilt. The expression of a man who has been running a very long race and has just looked up to find the finish line has moved. James closed the door behind him and said nothing. He did not need to speak first. The silence was already doing the work. Victor's hand tightened around the phone. His jaw shifted once to the left, in the small, unconscious movement James had seen him make in every difficult negotiation for nearly 2 decades. The tell that meant Victor was calculating, running through options, measuring distances between where he stood and where he needed to be. There were no distances left. James placed the folded maintenance page on the small table beside the window. He smoothed it once with his palm and stepped back. Victor looked at the page and then looked at James. And in that look was the answer to every question James had not yet asked out loud. The company restructuring had been the reason. James's security team found it within 40 minutes. A series of transfers, a clause buried in a subsidiary agreement, a beneficiary designation that would have transferred controlling interest upon the death of the primary shareholder. Victor had spent 14 months building it quietly, carefully, in the spaces between ordinary business where no one thinks to look. He had chosen the inspector's name, knowing Marcus Webb was on leave and could not be reached to deny the signature. He had chosen the flight knowing James traveled alone on Thursday departures without a second crew. He had chosen wrong about one thing. He had not chosen what a 9-year-old boy would do with a torn piece of paper found in the rain beside a drainage channel on a Thursday morning. 2 men from airport security entered the room behind James. Victor did not struggle. He stood at the window for one long moment, looking out at the tarmac below, where the aircraft still sat in its bay, steps still in place, engines now silent. Then he set his phone face down on the table beside the maintenance page and walked out between the 2 men without speaking. James stood at the window alone. Below on the tarmac, Caleb was sitting on a low equipment barrier near the hangar entrance, his wet jacket still dark with rain, his small, worn notebook open on his knee, the pencil moving across a page with calm, deliberate strokes, writing it all down. The time, the details, the sequence of what had happened, the way his father had taught him to record things that mattered. James watched the boy write for a long time. Then he walked downstairs and out through the terminal door and crossed the tarmac and sat down beside him on the barrier without saying anything. Caleb did not look up from his notebook. After a moment, he said something in the quiet, steady voice that had stopped James at the top of those boarding steps and would stay with him for the rest of his life. My dad always said, the most dangerous lies are the ones dressed in 19 years of trust.